Hey guys, this is my second video of chapter 1, and basically what I'm doing is I'm just reading through the highlights. So basically, when I read it, I just kind of highlight with in blue things that I'd like to talk about, and normally I just read that paragraph, not the whole thing. So I'm starting on page 29, which is the search for a compatible soulmate. So these are kind of the titles of the section. So I'm going to go through maybe 3 or 4 of these. So on the next page, on page 30, is where I did my first highlight. And in the middle of the page, Tim Keller is basically talking about the really stupid, dumb reasons why people get married today. So one woman said, I married my husband because I thought he was hot. And then, of course, years went by. The guy stopped working out. He grew a beer belly, and he was lazy, and the love was fading. And she's like, he's no longer hot. Let's get a divorce. So really dumb reasons why people get married. So that's kind of, you can see that on page 30. But I highlighted the bottom. So I'm going to go to the bottom paragraph that starts with, however, sexual attractiveness was not the number one factor that men named when surveyed by the National Marriage Project. They said that compatibility, above all, meant someone who showed a willingness to take them as they are and not change them. More than a few of the men expressed resentment at women who try to change them. Some of the men describe marital compatibility as finding a woman who will fit into their life. If you are truly compatible, then you don't have to change, one man commented. Okay, so I focused on this because this is a mistake in thinking. And I'm saying it's a mistake because I fell into this trap, and I'm sure you have too. When I was first married, my mind, everything was still in what I call single mode. I was still like a single person. I didn't know what it was to be married. I didn't know what it was to be a husband. And nobody had ever trained me. So I was married, but I was like a single man in my mind. Not in the sense that I was running around dating other people, but in the sense that, like in Moscow in the summer, Ludmila had to work all summer. As her husband, I should stay with her, support her, take on some extra teaching jobs, which in Moscow in the summer you get to make a fortune. But in Moscow in the summer it's hot. It's very hot. So where does everybody want to go? To the Black Sea or to Turkey. So summer came and I was just like, I'm going to do what I've done every other summer. I'm going to Crimea. I'm going by myself. I'm going to live with my friends. I'm going to climb mountains and read books, just like I always do. Guess what? That's what I did. So I kind of left my wife in the capital, and I just disappeared for weeks at a time. And finally, she managed a way to get doppelnitelny odpusk, which is like a total vacation. She was able to get one, and she came down and joined me. But what I was doing was wrong, and I did this several times. And now I would never do that. I would never go to Roatan and leave my wife here in the capital. That's just wrong. But back then I had this mentality that I'm married, but I'm not going to change. And so these men are saying, I'm going to get married, but the woman or my wife has no right to change me. And this is false looking at both angles. Because both really do have to change. And sometimes this takes time. Okay, so that's what I highlighted. And I'm sure you guys have personal things to say about this. The next kind of chapter or title heading is making men truly masculine. And it's funny at the top of page 32, it has like some of these guys that have all had extramarital affairs. Guys like Newt Gingrich and Bill Clinton and Anthony Weiner, all these guys. And I remember when this happened to Bill Clinton, all the presidents of the European countries were like, yeah, well, this is no problem. We all have our lovers. And we have this problem in Honduras. In Honduras, we have this machismo culture. So, I play soccer with my friends, and they're like, Evan, how many lovers do you have? I'm like, idiot, I'm married. Covenant? They don't understand covenant. They're like, oh, I have 5 lovers. I'm like, yeah, it's going to end badly for all of them. Yeah, it's going to be really bad for you. I'm sorry. Stay close to your friends. Go to church, please. Read. So these people today, it's kind of like men won't get married because men are saying it's going to take away from my freedom. I'm not going to be free anymore. Well, freedom means they get to just go around and have all of these different love affairs. But here's the problem. That's what animals do, and we're not supposed to be emulating, the animals. And also, in the past, this is what Tim Keller is teaching on page 32. In the past, what was considered to be a real man was self-mastery, a man able to control himself. And today we have the very opposite. So let me read top of page 32. The conventional explanation for this is that marriage simply doesn't fit the male nature. In particular, it is said the most masculine of men don't do well in marriage. It is argued that a need for sexual conquest, female adulation, which is like flattery, and illicit and risky liaison, French. Of course, it's a French word. Sorry, I won't say it. Seems to go along with drive, ambition, and confidence in the alpha male. But Lipton argued that marriage was traditionally, listen to this, a place where males became truly masculine. How do you become truly masculine? By learning to control yourself. Self-mastery, self-control. For most of Western history, the primary and the most valued characteristic of manhood was self-mastery. A man who indulged in excessive eating, gluttony, drinking, drunkenness, constant, a pattern, sleeping or sex, uncontrollable sex drive, who failed to rule himself well, was considered unfit to rule his household. Think about it. How are you going to keep the household floating? How are you going to rule your household if you can't even take care of yourself? If you have no self-mastery. If you have no self-mastery, the house falls apart. You're outside of the ark. You're in the deluge. You're drowning in the ocean of nescience. That's why you have to master yourself. And I think, you don't have to go to the East to read books about how to master yourself. In the Christian tradition, we have the greatest books starting way back in the Church Fathers. You don't even have to go past the 4th century to find Christian disciplines where you can learn to master your excess desires. Okay, I'm going to read the next paragraph. Lipton, a professor of history at SUNY Stony Brook, concluded, in the face of recent revelations about the reckless and self-indulgent sexual conduct of so many of our elected officials, Schwarzenegger, Clinton, it may be worth recalling that sexual restraint, rather than sexual prowess, was once the measure of a man. So when you read the Bible, you got to think, is the Bible condoning something, or is the Bible condemning something? So a lot of Muslims, when I point out that, Muhammad was actually breaking the law, which is the Torah, I'm not going to get into apologetics, but many Muslims are like, well, look at Solomon. Look at how many wives he had. And look at David, who's a man after God's own heart, and he cheated on his wife. And Abraham and all these people that had concubines, yeah. But Tim Keller himself says, once you learn how to read, follow the trajectory of what the author is trying to show us. Once you learn to read, you come to the conclusion, this is not me, this is every great Bible commentator, you come to the conclusion, the Bible's not teaching this. The Bible is giving us real historical stories exactly as they happened. But the Bible is not saying, do this. It's the opposite. The Bible is saying, do this, and you're going to burn your hand. You're going to touch this fire, your hand's going to get burned. And every single time in the Torah, in the Old Testament, let's just stay with the Old Testament, every time God's perfect laws are broken, just continue reading, just keep reading, and keep reading, it ends in disaster. So what is the biblical author telling us? If you live like Solomon, Solomon himself says, all is vanity. I've tried it all. It's vanity. I've had 1,000 wives. What did David do? David, finally, he woke up and he knew what he did. And he repented and wept before the Lord because he knows he broke God's law. So the Bible is not condoning any of these things. Only a person who does not know how to read says that the Bible is condemning. And so I'm tying this with this idea here. Because people are saying, Bible's teaching polygamy. No, you're an idiot. The Joseph Smith and Brigham Young and all these people are like, I'm gonna do it because the guys in the Old Testament did it. Yeah, well, you're a fool. You never studied. The Bible's not teaching that. Read and read on and read on. Jesus says it was not so since the beginning. In the beginning it was, therefore a man shall leave his father and mother and hold fast to his wife. It doesn't say wives. A man shall leave his father and mother and hold fast to his wife. And the two shall become one flesh. That's what the Bible teaches. Of course, people corrupt that. Okay, I went on a rant. I'm going to keep going. I kind of passed over the next page, couldn't find anything. It's just talking about our toxic culture. And it's talking about, why people don't get married and why they never find the right partner. And I ended up highlighting almost the whole page on page 36. Great big highlight. So I'm going to read this, starting at the top, 36. After all, our culture makes individual freedom, autonomy, and fulfillment the very highest values. And thoughtful people know deep down that any love relationship at all means the loss of all three. So again, this is our toxic culture, and it's what it's teaching us. You can say, I want someone who will accept me just as I am. But in your heart of hearts, you know that you are not perfect. There are plenty of things about you that need to be changed, and that anyone who gets to know you up close and personal will want to change them. Yes. And you also know that the other person will have needs, deep needs and flaws. That all sounds painful, and it is. And so you don't want any of that. Yet it is hard to admit to the world or to yourself that you don't want to be married. And so you put your flaw-o-matic on high. So you're looking just for Mr. Perfect. But you're not perfect. That will do it, and that will keep marriage away. But if you avoid marriage simply because you don't want to lose your freedom, that is one of the worst things you can do to your heart. And one of my favorite all-time writers is C.S. Lewis. And in his wonderful book titled The Four Loves, C.S. Lewis says this, and he's talking about becoming vulnerable. C.S. Lewis says, love anything, and your heart will certainly be wrung and possibly broken. Becoming vulnerable. If you want to make sure of keeping it intact, the heart, you must give your heart to no one, not even to an animal. Wrap it carefully round with hobbies and little luxuries. Avoid all entanglements. Lock it up safe in the casket or coffin of your selfishness. But in that casket, safe, dark, motionless, airless, it will change. It will not be broken, and it will become unbreakable, impenetrable, and irredeemable. The alternative to tragedy, or at least to the risk of tragedy, is damnation. So people that give their hearts to nobody end up damning themselves. So C.S. Lewis is like, no. The seas do get rocky out there, but that's why you need to know how to swim. Okay, I'm going to skip to the next page, page 37 at the top. The next mini, section you could call it, is you never marry the right person. This one's very interesting. I just underlined the first sentence. What then is the solution? So what is the solution to all of this that I'm talking about? What's the solution? The Christian answer to this is that no two people are compatible. This is shocking, but no two people are compatible. I'm going to go to the next page. I highlighted the top of page 38 where it says, second paragraph down, we never know whom we marry. We just think we do. Or even if we first marry the right person, just give it a little while and everything will change. So the primary problem, the problem with all of this, is learning how to love and care for the stranger to whom you find yourself married. So obviously, what is Keller getting at by quoting all of this? He's quoting that people are constantly changing. So the person, like even the Evan, let's say Ludmila fell in love with an idea, or maybe the way I was 7 or 8 years ago. But guess what? That me right now is completely different, very different. Not radically different, but very, very different. I'm a different person now. But I could also say about Ludmila, she's absolutely changed. She's not the woman I married. And I could say she's getting better. She's getting smarter. Her devotion is better to the Lord. But she's very different. And so that's what it's getting at. You marry somebody and you think they're frozen in time and frozen in ice. No, they break out of that. They become new people. So you constantly have to fall in love with a new person. I'm going to read the top of page 39. Over the years, you'll go through seasons in which you have to learn to love a person whom you didn't marry, who is something of a stranger. You'll have to make changes that you don't want to make, and so will your spouse. Because you might just think, oh, it's her, she's changing. No, you're changing too. The journey may eventually take you into a strong, tender, joyful marriage. But it is not because you married the perfectly compatible person that person does not exist. Which is why, like in my marriage, we never mention the word divorce. We don't say the word doesn't exist. Why doesn't it exist? It's because the idea is that, oh, my wife is giving me problems. I can change her easily. I can just end all of this and change her and get someone else. And that person then is going to fulfill me. But here's the problem. That other person is not compatible with me. That other person has a sinful nature. And look at myself. I'm no angel. So my wife can also think, Evan, he lays on the couch all day, he's lazy, he reads all the time. He could be such a better husband. Okay, so she thinks she could change me with someone else. No. Because no two people are compatible. It's a constant struggle, to get along. But that's just the way things are, because of the sinful nature. So we don't mention the word divorce because we know there's nobody better out there for us. We have to make it work. We have to make each other happy. We have to work with ourselves. So, perfectly compatible person? No. The Hollywood movies, they're dumb. Throw them away. It doesn't work. And that is about it. I'm going to finish with reading the bottom of page 40 and the top of 41, and that'll be the end of the next section. So, the author that he's quoting from gives us the first reason that no two people are compatible for marriage, namely that marriage profoundly changes us. But there's another reason. Any two people enter into marriage are spiritually broken by sin. That's what I was saying a second ago. Which, among other things, means to be self-centered. Living life incurvatus in se. I don't know, it's Latin. But what that means is a life lived inward and for oneself. Just living for yourself. As author Denis, he's French, why should neurotic, selfish, immature people suddenly become angels when they fall in love? That is why a good marriage is more painfully hard to achieve than athletic or artistic prowess. Raw natural talent does not enable you to play baseball as a pro or write great literature without enduring discipline and enormous work. Why would it be easy to live lovingly and well with another human being in light of what is profoundly wrong within our human nature? Indeed, many people who have mastered athletics and art have failed miserably in marriage. So the biblical doctrine of sin explains why marriage, more than anything else that is good and important in this fallen world, is so painful and hard. Yes, and that's what it is. Like I said, that's why I like this book. It's not really sugarcoating anything. It's telling you how things are. Yes, it is difficult. Yes, it is hard. But, I mean, one thing I could say of the Christian tradition, we have great traditions and great disciplines that can be practiced. And it's saying, this is even more difficult than learning learning art or learning a sport. But there are disciplines that you can practice, even disciplines that you can practice to learn to love somebody who's difficult to love. Because you might always think the other person is difficult, but guess what? You're complex too. You're very complicated. So everybody's difficult. But one thing the Word of God does is it helps us. It helps us not only through these difficulties, but it helps us, overcome, and it helps us to thrive. And I think what I'm trying to say is that the Bible, especially following in the footsteps of Jesus Christ, it helps us love those who are unlovely. And that could be us. Because if you think about how Christ loved us, we weren't very lovely. We weren't... I'll leave it at that. So I'll make one more video, and one more video will finish the chapter 1. And hope you guys enjoyed. Sorry if I was ranting. See you guys.